But before we go more into the idea of green, we have to look at the foundation in terms of the economic foundation of applying green initiatives and why not only are they good for the environment, but they're also good for the economy. The Toyota manufacturing process was written up in terms of a theory called lean production by Womack and Jones. And they published it in the Harvard Press. And what they looked at was a system that Toyota Motors had basically developed in terms of a continuous cycle of improvement and lean production, in the sense of trying to constantly look at their systems, applying new technologies to save money, time, materials, always looking at a constant cycle of improvement, integrating that into their business plan, and being committed to innovation. I think most of you, especially in this region as well, have seen the success, especially in spite of the carnage right now in terms of the motor industry. Toyota is still, compared to many of its competitors, financially and from a business standpoint quite sound because of this approach. When the theory was expounded, it was mostly focused on large enterprises or corporations. What Cybernomics did was take those principles and said we can apply the same principles of continuous cycle of improvement, looking at lean consumption in terms of the products that a company buys in terms of their IT, and basically applied it to their business plan to see how we could have finally the promise that by adopting new technologies you can actually save costs. Now we took that to the next level when we looked at the environment and the impact in terms of carbon emissions. So what we did was, when we looked at the typical total cost of ownership, we said in today's marketplace and with the upcoming regulations and other movements in both the federal, provincial, and municipal governments trying to face this challenge of garbage, the challenge of carbon emissions and other environmental pollution, you have to look at a sustainable total cost of ownership. And basically what we developed in terms of our client, working with our clients, is what we call the total cost of ownership for the 21st century. And what does it encompass is your typical capital expenditures, or CapEx, looking at operating expenditures. In other words, if you roll out a project, or in terms of your day-to-day business plan, what is the operating cost of that company? We also looked at disposal expenditure. Something that when a company looks at the acquisition of new technologies, new cars, new computers, new servers, new desktop, what have you, they quite often neglect, in terms of the total cost of ownership, how much is it going to cost me, my company, my city, my province, my country, to dispose of that equipment. So when you're looking at comparative technologies or solutions, that's a cost that must be taken into consideration, especially with the heightened push by different municipalities in terms of recycling, safe disposal of toxic chemicals found in a lot of equipment. We looked at CARB-X, in other words, carbon emission costs. And that again playing with the idea of carbon credits. So in other words, by applying this technology, how much carbon do I really save? Or how much carbon do I add depending on how the project goes? So keeping that as one of the key variables in the equation. We looked at tax penalty. The province of British Columbia, they already have a carbon tax up and running. Although, again, the federal government, or the Federal Liberal Party, was defeated on this platform, it won't take long for more and more legislation to slowly creep in terms of taxation on carbon emissions. They're going to start at the big companies, but then they're going to work their way down to medium and small companies as well. So we don't want to, and I'll allude to that a little bit later, we want to talk about these issues and think proactively today, so we don't end up in a similar situation that the automotive industry finds itself today, like especially the big three. That knowing that oil and gas was going to eventually rise again, there was going to be another crisis in terms of petroleum costs, and knowing that this problem of carbon emissions and greenhouse gases was becoming more and more debated and more an issue for different levels of government, they ignored the problem. Right? With very few exceptions, they ignore the problem. And only at the last minute, when it actually hit them full force, are they scrambling now to try to shift their production facilities and their capabilities from gas-guzzling solutions to more fuel-efficient, hybrid, and other technologies. And from our perspective, what we want to look at is not just green IT or the IT aspect, but also look at other elements of the green business solution or green technology solution, so that as business owners, as members of government and different organizations, you're able to basically already have an idea of what's coming down the pipe and how you can prepare for it.